Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It's been a good week for the channel. It's been a great week for the channel actually, getting these videos out much more frequently. I'm enjoying it. You guys have been fantastic. We've got up to almost 8,000 subscribers now. We've increased by about 700 over the last week. Thank you very much. If you've just subscribed, please do hit a like on the video. It helps out, of course. And welcome to another one. We're going to look at the Welsh elections that are happening next May alongside the local elections in England, and indeed the Scottish Parliament elections also happening in May next year. So if you're interested in that and you haven't subscribed yet, please do take this opportunity to hit the subscribe button, because we're going to be doing a lot more coverage of this election, the local elections and the Scottish election as we get closer. But I haven't spoken about Wales for a little while, and I thought it was worth coming back to. I've only really done one video dedicated to Wales before, and it wasn't so much the Welsh Parliament. I think it was more to do with Welsh Westminster voting. So we're going to have a look at the Senedd now, and this is all courtesy again of Election Maps, fantastic website, electionmaps.uk. You can go and check it out yourself. It's all free. They've put in a lot of work this year. It's changed quite a lot, this website, since I started using it for this channel back in November last year. And yeah, absolutely go and check it out. All credit to them for the graphics that are on the screen today. And like I say, yeah, go check it out yourself. So the Senedd Nowcast is what you see on the screen. Before we get into things, there's a bit of admin to get out of the way. Feel free to skip over if you're not interested, but it's important. So the Welsh Parliament is changing next year. So it's getting bigger. It's increasing from a 60-member Parliament to a 96-member Parliament. And the voting system is changing. So it's changing to a closed list proportional system, which essentially means, in theory, each party will win the number of seats in each constituency commensurate with the percentage of the vote they win. So, for example, Wales, for this election and for future elections, Wales is being divided into 16 constituencies. Each constituency will have each constituency will have 6 members represent it. So let's say, for example, in one constituency, Plaid Cymru win 50% of the votes. In theory, Plaid Cymru would therefore win 3 of the 6 seats available in that constituency, and so on and so forth. That's the idea, and that's changing for this election. Also, 16-year-olds are allowed to vote, so this is an election 16-year-olds can participate in, which may affect the result as well. One last thing I have to mention before we get into it is that any sort of pronunciation here I will probably try and avoid, because I don't want to offend any Welsh people. So apologies for that. It's not really my strong suit. Right, so looking at the numbers, obviously you can see straight away that Reform and Plaid are leading the way. Wales is an area of the country where Labour are getting really butchered, similar to the areas we focus on a lot in the Nowcast for Westminster videos, like in Yorkshire and the through the Red Wall areas. Labour are being really heavily punished here. Now, we can go through and say the seat differences from this Nowcast compared to the last election, but of course, bearing in mind what I just said, there's more members in this new Parliament. It's somewhat irrelevant, but if we think about it in percentage terms, in 2021, when the Senedd was last elected, Labour won 30 seats, which was 50% of the seats available. Now, according to this Nowcast, they would win 24, which on the face of it doesn't seem like so bad a result, only 6 less, but of course that's only 25% of the seats. So you can say they've done 25% worse in 5 years than they did in 2021. For the Conservatives, they won 14 seats in 2021, which I think equates to about 15% of the seats available. 11 seats it represents a lot less. I can't remember what the numbers are, to be honest with you. But for the two main parties, it's not happy reading, as is the case across most of the country. For Plaid and Reform, of course, it is much happier reading. Reform coming from essentially nowhere. They've got one member of the Welsh Parliament at the moment, a Conservative member defected in the last few weeks. Haven't yet won a seat of their own in the Senedd, but they are projected to win the most seats, but it won't leave them in a position to govern, most likely. So let's come down. We can see the map. Very similar. This all works the same as what we're used to with the Nowcast for the Westminster voting. And you can see the green and the turquoise, teal, or cyan was one that got mentioned in the last video. Would take your fancy, pick your poison, whatever colour you prefer Reform to be. But the dark green of Plaid and the turquoise / teal / cyan of Reform are what dominate this map in Wales, and you can see Labour have been essentially pushed out entirely. Now, the constituencies are coloured for the party that's going to win, or is projected to win, the most votes or the highest vote share in that constituency. Of course, each constituency, as I said, represented by 6 members, and we'll look in a minute. But for now, just to take note that the Labour have been pushed out, essentially, well, in their entirety, really, clinging on in a few places in the south of Wales. Reform taking over those former Labour heartland areas for the most part, and Plaid absolutely dominating the sort of western areas of the country. So why, with 30 seats, would Reform not be in a position to govern? Well, of course, 30 is not really anywhere close to being a majority of 96. And you can see, actually, with how the chart is displayed here, that with the 28 Plaid members plus 24 Labour members, they would be just over the threshold to form a coalition majority government there. Might cause some consternation, perhaps, with Reform winning the popular vote, winning the most seats, and a sort of ideologically opposite government forming. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But is there scope for Reform to push up and get across the line themselves? We'll have a look. We'll get into that. Firstly, I think we'll start by looking at some of these Plaid areas where they're doing very well, and we'll see why, or how I should say, how Reform might be able to get up to the line themselves, potentially, if they can do what Plaid have done or are doing, according to this Nowcast. So if we go and have a look at some of these constituencies, you can see here in this constituency, Plaid up to 46% of the vote, Reform in second, but way behind on 23.2%. And so under this close proportional system, it gives Plaid 3 out of those 6 seats, with Reform gaining 2 and the Conservatives getting the last 1. So over 46% of the vote, over 45% of the vote, it's giving Plaid 3 of the seats. Up in Bangor Conwy, up in the north, 41.3% of the vote here. They're still getting 3 of the seats. I assume because all the other parties are really so far behind. The closest challenger, again, Reform, a full 20 points behind Plaid there. So again, Plaid picking up 3 of the 6 seats, which really, in an election with so many different parties standing, really 3 is probably the maximum you can hope to get, to be honest. So they're kind of maxing out in these constituencies. Again, in Ceredigion, 3 out of the 6 for Plaid again, with close to 41%. Reform again the closest challengers, but quite a way behind, almost 20 points behind again. And lastly, again, for Plaid, 3 out of the 6 excuse me, 3 out of the 6, 42.3%. Reform actually a bit closer here, but again, enough for Plaid to get 3 out of the possible 6. So in those areas where Plaid are dominating, they really are dominating. They're far enough ahead that they're able to claim 3 out of the possible 6 seats, claim 50% of the seats, even with slightly less than 50% of the vote. If we now look at Reform, on the other hand, this is one of their strongest constituencies at the moment. Just under 30% of the vote for Reform, with the Lib Dems actually in second position. But you can see the gap nowhere near as large. It's 10% here, nowhere near as large as what we saw with Plaid, and that's meaning Reform are only able to get 2 out of the 6 seats, with the other 4 going to other parties. Similarly, as we come down here, much tighter race here in Pontypridd. Only a few percent in it. Reform able to get 2, Plaid also get 2, Labour get 2, because it's essentially a 3-horse race split very evenly. I think similar situation down here. Indeed, very, very close race. More of a 2-horse race here between Labour and Reform, so they only get 2 again. And then here again, same thing, 2-horse race, essentially being split between Labour and Reform, getting 2 each, Plaid and the Tories making up the rest. Up in the north, let's have a look. Very similar again. Reform ahead, but not by enough to really make that count. So they get 2, Labour get 2, and again the same story here, where it's a 3-horse race actually. So 2 for Reform, 2 for the Conservatives, and actually only 1 for Labour there, despite them being essentially even Stevens with the Conservatives in terms of vote share, and Plaid managing to pick up the last one on just under 17%. So I think the story of that really is, look, there's still some time to go, of course, and like I say, we'll be looking at this in much more detail as we get closer to the time. There's still over 6 months to go before this election, and what Reform have to try and do, I think, in that time, if they want to have any hope of forming their own administration in Wales, is they've got to press home the advantage in these areas where they're already ahead, because they're ahead, but they're not really ahead by too much. You know, the most they were was 10% ahead here, ahead of the Liberal Democrats. So they've got to try and eat into the Labour vote, mostly. I should think in a lot of these South Wales constituencies, it's Labour where they're only just ahead. So there's a lot of scope there for the Reform Party to eat into that Labour vote. Now, are these Labour voters that are clinging on in this part of Wales, are they likely to go to Reform? Are they the sort of voters that will vote for Reform, or are they more likely to be more left-wing voters that might indeed go to Plaid? Perhaps they are, and in that case, all that would probably happen, unless Plaid and Labour end up equaling, in which case you might end up with Reform getting 3, but I don't think Reform will get 3 seats, which is 30% of the vote under this system. So really, Reform have to boost their numbers up, getting up towards that 40% number, and leaving Labour in their wake. And the same applies for all of these other constituencies we looked at. They're neck and neck with Labour down here, neck and neck really, well, 3% in it here. So Reform have got to eat into that Labour vote if they can. There isn't much, I don't think, much more damage they can do to the Conservatives. 5% there, 12% there. For the Tories, this is 9%, 15%, perhaps some scope in this constituency, 10% there. So the Tories are a long way behind, kind of out the race. You know, like I've said many times, my last video was dedicated to the Conservatives being irrelevant. I think here's the main one where they can probably take some off the Conservatives. Can't pronounce a constituency name, I'm sorry. Please feel free to put in the comments how it's pronounced. But here the Conservatives on almost 24% of the vote, actually second in this seat just about. If Reform can eat into the Labour and Tory vote here, like they have done across swathes of England, then this is a very possibly a very good chance where Reform might get 3 out of the 6 seats. But that's what Reform are going to have to do if they're going to stand any chance of getting themselves over that majority line and stopping a Plaid and Labour coalition forming. But realistically, in a Parliament of 96, therefore a minimum of 48 required to have 50% of the seats. Ideally, you'd want 49 to have one more than 50%. So Reform, currently on 30, would need at least another 18 or 19. And Plaid, who are 2 behind, would therefore need another 20 or 21. So at the moment, with the way the votes are falling, it looks very difficult for either of those 2 leading parties to get over the line by themselves. And I suppose the benefit for Plaid is that they won't need necessarily to do that, because I'm sure Labour will be a willing coalition partner. Reform do need to get that by themselves. There's not going to be anybody that they can form a coalition with. They can't, for themselves, they can't form a coalition with the Conservatives, even if they were in a position to do that, because I think the optics of that for their party in the wider UK would be very damaging. You know, they've said multiple times they wouldn't do any sort of agreement or deal with the Conservatives in Westminster. People would obviously naturally question, say, well, if you were going to do it in Wales, why would you not do it across the UK? And a lot of Reform members, I think, would feel very betrayed by that. Remember, a large proportion of Reform members are former Conservative members who felt completely betrayed by that party, and there's a real deep sense of hostility towards the Conservative Party within the Reform grassroots. So I don't think it's a possibility for Reform to go into coalition with the Conservatives. So Reform have to get there by themselves, and on the current numbers, it just looks quite unlikely at the moment. I mean, even if we were to say that Reform were able to do what we discussed there just a moment ago and push their vote up in the areas where they're winning to get those 3 seats, well, they're 18 short, and they're winning in 6 or 7 constituencies, so that would only be another 6 or 7 seats. which gets them, you know, almost halfway there, but still not really close. So at the moment, it looks very difficult for reform. But who knows? Like I said, there's still a long way to go between now and this election actually happening. The sort of momentum that reform have had over the last 18 months has been very startling, very surprising, honestly, to see them continuing to, you know, kind of steamroll their way up in the opinion polls. And Wales has been a strong area for reform from quite early on, actually. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. I don't know when this Nowcast will be updated, but I'm sure close to the time it will be, and we'll watch with interest what happens here. And like I say, all of the local elections that are happening next year will be covered on this channel. Ramping it up, or planning to ramp it up from about 6 months out, so that's the 1st of November. As November rolls round, we'll start looking in more detail at all these elections coming up, including councils, local councils in England, and of course, like I said, Scotland too. But that's all for this video. I hope that was a good overview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. Thank you again to everybody who's subscribed recently. Like I said, the subscriber numbers over the last week have been incredible, so thank you for that. And again, if you did enjoy the video, I would much appreciate it if you could drop a like on there. And of course, as always, please get involved in the comments. Apologies for Welsh pronunciations and just avoiding that in general to all my Welsh viewers. Please feel free to add pronunciation tips in the comments if you so desire. I can't guarantee it will get much better, but yeah, anyway. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will see you on the next one.